And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcoming TC, who's not here. This is TC standing behind me, Trent. Welcome. This is TC. He's actually kind of like the Norman Bates psycho. I'm able to throw my voice in a very TC sounding way into this gnome. So this is actually TC. Trent?
Yes.
You ready to go, dude?
Yeah. I got the impression from the Iberian Rails Kickstarter that it was a fairly light game.
Huh. But I mean, like, I don't think it's light.
I mean,
I
that's
would
why I
say,
didn't back it, is I got the impression it was pretty light.
I gotcha. Why'd you get mini rails then? Because mini rails is like a lighter.
Because I played it and actually liked it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I would say that of all the Cube Rails games I played, Iberian Rails is the heaviest, I think, in terms of just what all is at your disposal. I'm not sure. I've not played them all. I've played a lot of Wabash Cannonball, Chicago Express. And that to me, like, I don't think I'd be too off base. Like, the people that generally like Cube Rails games generally call that one like the just kind of like the classic, the main one that like is you're just here's a Cube Rails game. Doesn't really have anything super weird or different about it. It just basically is a Cube Rails game. It was a really small Kickstarter though. Do you have Keeper coming in?
Yep.
As do I. Don't know how good it'll be. It was called Iberian Rails, an economic train game. And Trent thought
Yeah.
it was light.
Well, I went and read the Kickstarter, and like everything about it gave me the sense that it was light.
Ooh, they are Kickstarter exclusives that I've got. Oh, one of the Kickstarter exclusives I got, Trent, is called the Merger Attorney. Like, we're talking mergers like Indonesia. Basically, that's how they work. Seriously. Mergers like Indonesia.
Okay.
Is that the sound of TC firing everything up?
I thought it was, but then like I don't know.
But I haven't heard him. We can't hear you, TC. TC out there in Portland was like, they must mean 8:45 Pacific time. So right now he's an hour and 45 minutes early as far as he's concerned. Still can't hear you, sir. No TC. I'd have to say this, Trent. You can tell that it's that company's first game they've produced.
Again, that was another reason why I was a little bit like, nope.
Its box is like just a hair smaller than the average Euro box, but the map itself is like the same size as the box, so you like really can't get it out without just kind of tipping it upside down. All the boards in it, and this happens in a lot of games, so it's not just their issue, but like all the character boards, they like halfway through our game, they were pretty much all basically an arch. Like they were so warped. But I mean, it happens a lot, I think, when they have the pre-punched cardboard that gets put into a plastic bag and then shipped. Because the same sort of thing happened in Spirit Island.
Hello. Hello.
Eventually went back. Yo, TC, we can hear you now.
Okay.
You can be heard,
Sorry.
sir.
Sorry, I'm having big microphone issues tonight. I bought these new headsets to see if they would work, and they're not, so I'm back to my old setup. I was trying to actually use my computer tonight to do this.
You got nice new stuff, and it didn't work? That's
yeah, it's
yeah. Hi, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So let me adjust my levels here so you can maybe hear me a little better.
Oh no, I can hear you fine, dude. You're coming through just perfect right now.
Oh, excellent. Okay, awesome. I'm good. Sorry about the delay. New toys, not knowing how to use them. I figured, since I'm an official host, I should get me something practical. Well, you saw how well that worked.
No, I'm sure it'll work sometimes. It's usually some sort of setting that if somebody works in like the technical support guy at my school is who I always ask about it if I have a question, because he's so used to troubleshooting everything.
Oh wow.
Usually it's just some sort of setting. I mean, of course it could be malfunctioning, and hopefully if that case you've got a warranty or something.
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about it. I can take it back. Or I can actually take it back and have them show me how to use it.
Send it back. All right. Well, TC, you've done the old me and Trent were your openers here, and you've done the general concert thing here of making your audience wait for you. So.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, it's important to me. I'm that important.
If you jump into the pop-up chat there, the pop-out chat that I shared the mic. Or not the mic, but the pop-out chat list in our Google Hangout. You can go ahead and see the chat there if you guys want to try to pull that up. And I've got our outline here. We're going to talk about niches in the hobby.
Niches in the hobby. Is that yeah? I gotta know what definition we're going to use for niche, but yes, we can talk about niches in the hobby.
I think the definition itself is part of the discussion.
Cool, because being a biology major, talking about a niche is a completely different thing for ecology. So that's something I've actually struggled with quite a bit. So it'll be fun to talk about it.
Okay. Sounds cool, dude. All right, Trent, anything before we get going here?
Nope. Let's do this.
Let's go. Three, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I'm your host, Joe Sallin. I've been joined tonight by...
Trent.
Oh my goodness. I didn't do what I normally do. So let me get that. Let me start over again here. We'll start over. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. We're a podcast about board games, and we have a very special episode tonight where we're welcoming somebody brand new onto the podcast for their first inaugural episode. If you look on your video right now, which we are recording this live on YouTube, you can see our new member right here. It's a small painted gnome I bought from my neighbor. I'm going to name him, I think I want to name him Doug. Anyway, welcome here to Doug. Also, for the first time as an official co-host, we have TC Reid joining us. Actually, that's the big announcement. TC, how you doing?
I'm fine. I actually looked at the your guild, and you made an announcement. People actually responded. I don't know if they're actually excited to have me on or just tolerating it or just seeing what kind of train wreck's going to happen. So this should be fun. I'm quite excited for this. I don't know why people want to listen to me. I just counter everything you say most of the time and just drive you up the wall. Maybe that's what they want. I don't know.
I think that makes you fit right in here. But TC, we are also, me and TC here for TC's first episode as an official co-host of the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. We've also joined by veteran co-host who's been here since day one,
Andy Dennison.
And Trent Ham, unfortunately, could not make it tonight. But Andy Dennison did find a voice emulator to make himself sound like Trent. So it's great to see you tonight, Andy.
Good to see you too, Joe.
So, since you're Andy, I was just wondering really quickly, could you tell me what's your favorite thing about Codenames?
My favorite thing about Codenames is that they made so many copies that it can make a really big fire on a cold night.
I think the correct answer, Andy, is your favorite thing about Codenames is how they streamlined it.
Oh boy, Andy might actually drop in and out of this episode if he can. He's able to, I think, join us for bits and pieces of the discussion, but the commitment he's got makes it impossible for him to actually join in. So, but we're going to be shifting around the schedule here in the next coming weeks, and those of you that listen to us live here, just wanted you guys to know that we will be recording on Monday night of next week instead of the regular Thursday night, and then we will, for the coming week after that, I believe we're going to go back to our regular schedule. But anyway, keep an eye on our Good Bored Ugly Guild on Board Game Geek if you want to really keep up to date with the latest news that's happening to Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. It's not going to flood your inbox or anything. We're just doing this, having fun, and we'll keep doing it as long as it's fun for us and fun for you guys. And it's definitely a blast to have TC on here because nobody can get me going quite like TC. But actually, you know what? That's kind of what I would say about Trent and Andy. So maybe maybe I surround myself with a bunch of people who all it takes is one thing that they know is going to throw me for a loop, and then that's it. We're done. So anyway, it's really exciting though, TC, to have you here, and also great to have you, Trent/Andy, for an episode tonight about niches in the board gaming hobby. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a part of what would be considered a niche, whether or not niche is actually a good thing, what are the benefits, what are sort of drawbacks of being a part of a niche, and we will be doing that after we review a few games and then hype some games. So quickly, before we get actually kicked off with any of our content here, please take a look at GameSurplus.com. They sponsor the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, as well as the other endeavors that TC and I are part of. And anyway, they've got a online game store that you can go find at GameSurplus.com. And what they've just added, and I'm very proud to be recognized in it as the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, is a section with podcast picks. So we've, me and TC, because TC is part of the Longview, which is also sponsored by Game Surplus, we've been asked to kind of give a few ideas of games that we personally really like and would like to basically attach our endorsement to. We're not benefiting monetarily in any way from specifically this thing. It's not like we're getting like a section of every game sold. That's not the way this is going to work. We just like these games and would love to see you guys out there happy with what you purchase, and think that they're great things. Right now, the only one on ours is the only one that Good, the Bored, and the Ugly is Modern Art, but look for that to expand to include more games as we fill up that list and get all those things, and Carmen programs them into his website. So anyway, check them out, GameSurplus.com. I've already mentioned it, but you should join the Board Game Geek Guild for the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Guild number 2173. We post several different things on there. Right now is a contest, and that contest is going to be ending in the next few days. So get on there and post now with your favorite wooden meeple component to get a entry into a contest that will do a random selection for a copy of Lignum, which I will send to you with you not having to pay a single dollar. I'll send it to you, and you get a copy of an excellent game about wood from Capstone Games, donated by Game Surplus. So, gentlemen, we are here to review games. Let us first start with TC. Of course,
Oh,
you would get to go first. You are guest of honor, guest of the night here. Tell us, TC, about a game that I feel like Trent has talked about a little bit because it has to do with one of his favorite historical events. I will let you take it from here.
Oh, so Trent, you like the Reformation? I want to talk about some Sola Fide.
Yeah, I've talked about Here I Stand before, so similar time frame.
Yeah.
Isn't it also like, didn't you say, Trent, that it's like sort of a celebrated time in your household, this like the anniversary of the Reformation?
We're Lutherans. So
it's the big 300-year anniversary.
500.
500.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
We're old school.
In 1817.
1517, late October.
Yeah, there's an anniversary edition of Here I Stand coming out to celebrate that. That's coming out in October.
I've got the upgrade pack coming because
sweet.
I like some Here I Stand.
Yep, I got mine on the way too. I am very excited to see how they're supposed to be putting some rules up when Virgin Queen into Here I Stand. So
from what I understand, they're basically turning it into Virgin Queen, which isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing at all. I like both of them, but yeah, there's some things in Virgin Queen are a lot better. But anyway, we're going to talk about some Sola Fide, the Reformation here. It's a game that came out by Stronghold Games. I believe it was part of their Great Designer series at number 6 or 7 or somewhere in there. And it's a 2-player game, and it covers the Reformation, where one person plays the Catholics, the other person plays the Protestants, and you're trying to sway certain territories either through the commoners or the nobility to your particular religion that you're representing. I was actually looking forward to this one quite a bit. I finally managed to get my hands on a copy, and Carissa, she loves these historical games, and I like the designers. So I was really excited to get this going, and we've played it.
Is the designer here the same one from is it Twilight Struggle that I'm thinking of?
Yeah, it's Jason Matthews and Christian Leonard Hart or something like that. Yeah, those are the two designers for Twilight Struggle. And yeah, and just on that pedigree alone, this was like, man, I've got to get my hands on this somehow, and I did. And I've played about 4 or 5 games of this, and it's how you play it is each person has a deck of 15 cards that you draft. I think it's very important that you draft these cards because when you learn it, they recommend 15 cards, and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of simple. But when you start drafting these cards, you can really map out a strategy, and you're just basically going back and forth and trying to control how many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's 10 territories that are going to flip over, and once you get them, you get victory points. You can throw out oh God, what's it called? It's this green guy. It's a contention marker where if you win that territory with that marker on it, you get an extra victory point. And then at the end of the game, you just add up victory points. It's really quite simple. One of the things that I'm struggling with this one, and I think it may have to do with my love for Here I Stand, is that for some reason, I mean, the game's solid. Mechanically, it's really good, and I enjoy playing it. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of I'm going here to do this and to distract you. I go over here and flip this thing over to Catholics and ha ha ha. It's even got a die roll, but the die roll is basically the Catholics have a card that's an army card, and it's pretty powerful when they pull it off. So as a compensation, the Protestants roll a die and they get a random benefit to it. That's one of 6 things because it's a 6-sided die, which that works. But what was really bugging me about the game is that it was like, man, and Here I Stand, we were just talking about this, it really feels like you're connected to the theme of that game. If you're playing the Protestants, you're really struggling against the Catholics. But Here I Stand is just like the most history I've ever seen crammed into the box in my life. It is just wow. So, and it's really unfair to make a comparison because they're really not even a similar game except for the theme they share. But I'm playing it and I'm like, okay, this works mechanically, it's fun, but something's not firing. You get something just feels wrong about it. So I'm playing again and I'm drafting it, and we're drafting it, and the draft's really cool because you can get your strategy. You draw 3 cards, you pick 1, you discard 2. You draw 3 cards, you pick 1, you discard 2, and you can build your hand, and you can do some really cool things. But it's like, man, something's bugging me about this. There's some kind of thematic disconnect. And when I finally ran down what it was, is that you have 15 cards, and each of these cards are historical events, right? You're like playing this card, and you're like, okay, this is this guy making this speech to, do this to influence these people and whatnot. But as the game goes, you're recycling these cards, right? So you're going to see you're going to see these cards frequently. You're not, and some of these are historical events. So I'm sitting there playing the same historical event in this same area multiple times for the same effect, right? I'm like, oh, that's the problem. Because in a game like Twilight Struggle, or even Here I Stand, huge historical events are like one-time use cards, right? You use them, and bam, they're shot out of the game.
Well, a lot of them are a lot of them are specifically one-shot events, but then there are other ones that stay in. But they stay in because they're kind of more generic and are just written differently. But you're saying that these ones are bigger events that just stay in?
The 99 Theses, right? 99 Theses. I was playing that event over and over and over again to like throw the nobility towards the Protestants. I was just okay. But I'm like, I mean, it's like this weird time loop thing where it's like, oh, you're going to nail him on again. Okay, I'm going to nail him to the door again. Okay, I'm going, just in case you miss it the first 3 times, I'm doing it again, right? I'm like, oh, it was that disconnect. I'm like, oh, okay. And it shouldn't be there. I mean, there's like a whole secondary book to this game that describes every card and what the event did historically and what happened, which is really cool. I mean, it works really well. But that disconnect is like, oh man. And so I don't know where this is going to fall on it, because I was just like, and then what's really funny is like, well, maybe this game was something else before. And it turns out it is a re-implementation of a previous game. It's a re-implementation of a game called Campaign Manager 2008. And once I saw that, I'm like, oh, okay, now these mechanics are starting to make a little bit more sense. Because, you're having guys going out to campaign for you over and over again to sway the population, either Republican or Democrat, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, now that makes sense. I'm like, okay, so it's a little bit of a disappointment. It's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. I really enjoyed all my plays with it, and I'm wanting to play more. Again, it's a 2-player game, so it's kind of hard to find, just one other person to play with you when you have a bunch of people show up to play games with you. But hey, if you like these designers and you like drafting games with area control, it's really cool. It's a good endorsement. It's a solid endorsement. I just don't know if it's going to be a game that's going to stick around or we're going to play a lot.
Well, TC, you approach games very frequently from that, like, you want that historical richness, that backdrop to work. And it sounds to me like, in a way, this sort of broke that for you.
A bit, it's like I said, it's just something that was bugging me. I'd play, I'm like, man, something's just not right here. Something's, it's like, was it mechanically? It's all working fine. It took me like 5 plays to put my finger on it, which, nowadays anymore, you get 5 or 6 plays of a game, and that's great, right? You've got some gameplay out of it.
Yeah, for sure. But so your first play of it, you thought this is a really cool system. Your second play, you're like, something doesn't quite feel right. Your third play, you realized, why am I playing the same historical event over and over and over? And then your fourth and fifth, it sounds like you were basically at that point looking online, like there's got to be something up here.
There's something. Yeah, there's something. I was like, this. It felt like it was a re-implementation. It felt like it's like there's something not quite right here. And sure enough, I'm like, oh, there it is. But still, and that's kind of funny because I was looking at these other Stronghold, because this is part of, I'm looking online now as part of the Stronghold Games, the Great Designer series. And of all the games that they put out under this label, the only one that has gotten any traction that I can tell is the Great Western Trail.
Great Western Trail. And Cottage Garden is pretty decent.
Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got Uwe Rosenberg for that one, and that's the Great Designer series. And I think Andy recently got the one by Jeff Engelstein, Fog of War, which I've heard some pretty positive and interesting comments about that. So, but I don't think he's gotten it played yet. I think I just recently got it to him. So, yeah, it was it's an interesting series. I think it's kind of strange to sell based on just a designer's name.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that the Great Designer series by Stronghold is a lot more screened than, say, Hengist.
That's true. I'll give you that one.
Also, there was like this recent Kickstarter that was all about designer names, and you were basically buying games that hadn't been designed yet because these designers had been given a contract to design a game for this company. And I think it was Calliope Games that did it, you know, like a great designer series where they would send you a game every 2 months or 3 months, and it would be by a big name designer, but you were basically paying like $150 for this subscription that lasted a year or so, and you were going to get like 5 or 6 games out of it. But I looked at one game, the one that was by Richard Garfield. You know, one of Trent's top 10 designers, as I recall. Correct, Trent?
Mm-hmm. I'd still put him there because some of his designs are really good.
Oh, no, and I'm not trying to say he's not, like, I think I judge people by their work. I guess I come from I'm a teacher's perspective, and I don't think of kids as being good kids or bad kids. I mean, like, when they're no longer my students, I might look back and say, oh, they were this or they were that, but I'm judging their works, and I'm attaching that to them. And I think, honestly, like, there can be great designers that have great designs, but, you know, like, it takes a great designer to make a great design, but not every design by a great designer is great. If that makes any sense. This game by Richard Garfield was like a party game that just did, I mean, it was the thinnest social pressure. Oh my goodness, we get points for answering the same. Let's all answer the same game. It's called Hive Mind. Literally as frustrating as it sounds.
Yeah, if you think every designer has a lemon, and I ran across one similar. It was a Alan Moon and Richard Berg game called Warriors. Wow, that game was so bad that I cannot get rid of it. It's like I break it up, be like, hey guys, let's remember this, and they're like, no.
Yeah. I think that the Great Designer series, I mean, I definitely think he's screening them more. I mean, you know, I think that within the Great Designer series, you see Great Western Trail, which is already, you know, by itself sells an entire line. But I mean, personally, I'm not going to buy a game just because of whose name is on the box unless the description matches something that really does interest me. And unless it does seem like they've done their due diligence and not just picked this game up with scraps of what didn't work in other games. Angus.
That was pretty bad.
Yeah, that I've heard about that. It means I don't even want to try it. I've just heard it's like this legend, like, and then there was Angus. I'm like, ooh, what? I don't want to go near that. That looks bad.
I think Uwe Rosenberg has basically disowned it and said, yeah, they wanted a game. I told them it wasn't good, and they still made it. So, well, thanks for telling us about Sola Fide. You know, it means faith alone. I did learn that in Latin while you were talking there, TC. So,
sweet. Well, there you go. You learned something.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Protestant doctrine, right? Like a Protestant ideology. Well, let's move on then from the Reformation and take our talents to space with a game by, well, a interesting trading game that I got to participate in. And Trent, take it from here.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Sidereal Confluence, which is a game for 4 to 9 players. It's designed by Tausetti Dutchman. It's apparently his name. I suspect it's a pseudonym, but I'm not sure of that. And it's published by WizKids, interestingly enough.
Yeah, when I saw you were going to talk about this, I looked it up and I saw the publisher. I'm like, oh my God, Trent, have you lost your mind?
No, it's almost entirely cards. There's a few tokens, but it's almost entirely cards.
There's a lot of cards here, though. And just for our audience, for those that are listening in the car or anything like that, the game he's talking about is spelled Sidereal. It looks like Sidereal. Like Sidereal is in like a movie term, I think Sidereal, but it has an A instead of being all E's in it. So Sidereal,
Sidereal, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, Confluence.
Well, I'm not too worried about it.
Sure.
Anyway, so this game is a trading game. That's really what it comes down to. In this game, you are each player is a civilization among 9 civilizations that are slowly agreeing to confluence, are essentially agreeing to become one civilization slowly over time. That's the story behind it. So they're doing this by becoming tighter and tighter trading partners by trading technologies and such. And the winner of the game is the civilization that has the most influence over the confluence that they become. So that's what the victory points represents, is how much influence your native civilization has had over the one that they're all merging into. So what this turns into, the way this is implemented, is it's a trading game, but it's very much a win-win trading game, where you're going to be making trades with your partners, but generally if you're making a trade with someone, you're both almost always coming out as a winner. And in the sense that you two are both going to gain something out of it, and that's going to put you ahead of the other players at the table, because you're both going to get some benefit from that trade. The way this works is that all players start. First of all, let's talk about this. All players are. This game is very asymmetric. All players not only have their own special variable player powers, they're practically playing the game by different rules. There's very different stuff going on with each civilization. They just work way different. I can really only talk about the one I was playing as, but I noticed some of the other things that other people were doing. So in this game, the basic structure of it is you have a trading round, and then you have an economic round, and then you kind of have a cleanup round. The trading round is basically you're all trading cubes. You start the game with a certain number of cubes. Each civilization has a unique set of cubes that they start with. They represent different types of goods, and you're trading them with other players. So why are you trading them? It's because eventually you're going to use some of the cubes during the economic phase to convert them to a better set of cubes. You do this because you have a number of cards on the table that represent converters. They have a white arrow on them. On the left side of the white arrow, they have a small number of cubes or other resources, and on the right side of the arrow, they have more cubes or resources. So you're like, for example, you might be turning 2 small cubes into 2 large cubes. The large cubes are worth more and can do more stuff. That might be one of your converters, but to run it, you have to have the 2 small cubes first. And you might get those during the trading phase. So, for example, I might go to the person on my left during the trading phase and I say, I have this large cube here that I don't really have any use for, but I'll trade it to you for those 2 small cubes that I need for this converter I have. They go, okay, because then they can use the large cube for their converter, and you can use your small cubes for your converter. You go ahead to the economic phase. I'm going to use my converter card to turn those 2 small cubes into 2 large cubes. We move on forward from there.
But you can't chain things.
You can't chain things during
Very
the economic phase. You have to have the starting stuff for all your converters, and then you do them all at once. There's no chaining. So that makes the trading even more important. You're definitely trading with other people. What's interesting in this is you can literally trade anything that's not bolted down to the table other than victory points. You can't trade victory points. So you can literally trade your converters for a round to other people. You can say, here's this converter. You can actually use it and I can't. But if I'm loaning it to you, I want to get back one of the outputs out of that converter. And you just give it back to me, and then I'll take the converter back at the end of the round. Deal? Okay, then you can do that.
And that you are now bound to that.
Yeah, all trades are binding. There isn't any like, I lied to you, diplomacy style. Your trades are binding. If you agree to them, then you have to stick with that. If not, then the other players at the table can vote on how to penalize you, and they'll probably hammer you fairly hard. Because you're putting yourself at the mercy of all the other players against you. So you really don't want to be in that position. Your trades are binding in this game is the way to think about it. So you can trade ahead and say, all right, at the end of the round, I will take some resources, or next round, I'll borrow that converter from you, or anything you want. You can trade cubes. You can trade the various kinds of resources. There are ships that you use for bidding on new. We'll not get into specifics, but essentially you're using them to bid on new converters and things like that. Some of the converters turn into victory points. Furthermore, another way you get victory points is there's some of the converters are shared with all of the players when you develop them. And another thing that you bid on in the final phase, the third phase of it that I call like the upkeep phase, is you bid on literally they call them technology teams or research teams. And you literally bid on those to create new technologies for everyone else to get a new converter. But you get it first. So you get it for part of the round, and then they would get it at the end of the round. And then everybody will have their own copy of that converter. So there's some technologies that are shared with the whole world. There's some that you have for yourself.
Just the
And
ones
so
that you start with, though. You're
yeah.
not able to research any of those.
Another thing that's interesting is during that trading phase, you have the opportunity to be upgrading a lot of your converters. Anything on it with a purple arrow or a flip arrow is something that you can upgrade, and you're allowed to do that during the trading phase. Most upgrades have a cost of some sort, but what they do is they turn cards into better converters, or they allow you, like I said, you're developing a new technology. You flip that card over and you get a new technology, plus you get a bunch of victory points for that new technology. So as soon as you bring out a new card just for you that round, at the end of the round, you're forced to share it with everybody else, like I described. But then you get some victory points for having done that. You get more victory points if you do it earlier in the game. You get fewer later on. You go through 6 cycles of this all around. The trading phase is real time. Everybody's saying, hey, I need 2 brown cubes. Hey, I need 2 large blue cubes. Hey, I need 2 large yellow cubes. I need a hexagon. They have these little octagon-shaped little cylinder things. I need 2 cylinders. I need this. I need that. I need a ship. I need this and that. Whatever you might need for your converters. And you're doing that real-time trading until everybody says, I'm done. All but one player says, I'm done trading. Then you run all of your converters. And then you have a round where you bid on new things that are going to come out into the game. And you just do that 6 times, and that's the end of the game. What this ends up doing is the real-time trading almost feels overwhelming at first, the first time you're playing, because you don't have a real sense of what you're bidding for. But what you do is the first time you start running those converters a little bit, you get a sense of what you're doing. And even more so, you get a sense of how your unique race works. So my unique race was a race that none of my converters really worked by default. I had to buy extra cards to make any of them work, but my converters were really, really good. So like I had to pay a huge startup cost to get my converters going, the ones I started with, but they were really, really, really good. So what that meant was early on, I really needed resources badly. And what I should have been doing is offering, like, if you give me 2 cubes in the first round, I'll give you like 6 cubes in round 3. I should have been doing a lot of trades like that. That would have been the right thing for me to do. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I ended up coming in 4th out of 5. I now understand, having played a full game, some of what I should have been doing with that race, but I wasn't quite getting there yet because they work so differently. The guy over to my left, his converters were all made up of 2 separate cards. So what that meant was he had 2 different routes with which to upgrade them. So that he might be able to upgrade the left card on a converter or the right card on a converter. Everybody else's converters were just 1 card. His were all like multi-piece converters. So
he could make like just an amazing converter.
Yeah. But he had to upgrade both halves, and he could do that more stepwise, and he could do it more in response to what's going on the table. So he was trying, he was like stepwise upgrading his converters and doing other things like that. I still don't even really understand what the person on my right was doing. They were doing something different. I was not quite following what was going on with his race. Joe's race was interesting in that it involved a deck I'm simplifying here, but essentially involved a deck of random technologies. They're called colonies, but what they are is they essentially just provide resources for you. Unfortunately, Joe had kind of a bad draw, and I'll let him complain about that now.
So I think that, Trent, what you've said so far, really, like, you've capitulated how the game is just so different based on the races that you are. And so the races that you get in this game is very crucial to mention, like, what these different things do, because you're playing, it feels like a totally different game. Mm-hmm. Your goals aren't even the same. Like some of them, your goals are to try to colonize a whole bunch of things, like a guy who's right here in our chat right now, David, was doing a whole bunch of like trying to meet these essentially colonizing goals where he would just get more and more of these planets. Trent's already described some of the other ones at the table, but my specific one involved a deck of cards that you were supposed to randomly shuffle, and it was a converter, but you never knew what was going to come out of the converter. But one thing that was for sure about it was that you had to put in a planet, like a colony, and that colony is probably one of the most expensive things you can lose in the game. Like, a colony is a cube, not just this turn, but every turn. And so it recommended to me in the advice on my player board to go ahead and do this conversion and get myself set up. And everything I did here was just draw stuff that's late game points and did not give me any resources. By the 5th round in this game, I was down to 3 cubes of production, just my basic production, because I'd spent everything to try to get more of these relic planets, and every one that I got was either giving me a conversion to go to points or was giving me points and nothing else. And so I wasn't able to be deliberate. I saw other players at the table being able to sort of tailor what they were doing and get a feel for how they could have played the game better in the future. Whereas with my race, I just didn't see how I could have done anything because everything I did was reacting to a deck that was 12 cards that was all shuffled, and I couldn't tell what was where. So it felt to me like my personal feeling of this after one game is that I heartily recommend Sidereal Confluence. And that might sound strange because with my specific race, I did not like the way that the game worked. It was, to me, very much an outlier because everybody else had almost the absolute certainty. Would you say that, Trent? With the way that yours behaved, it was a matter of learning its systems.
Yes.
There was no random deck in anybody else's.
Yes, I want to play mine again, but now I have a grasp on what I need to do, and it wasn't like there was no really random element other than what came out on the bidding tracks each round.
Yeah,
so that was random.
That was random for everybody, but then you're bidding for them, so it's still not really random. The game has mechanisms in place for every bit of random that it gives you, except for the race that I played. So it's really just an outlier race that, to me, seems like a strange design choice. However, there's 9 different races in the game, so the next time I play, I'm just going to play with something else. But here's the reason I heartily recommend Sidereal Confluence. I have moved on from Catan. I've moved on from trading games. Like, to me, Chinatown, this sort of negotiation trading game, is about the closest I'll come. And it's just that a game of Catan has so many problems with it that aren't really necessarily directly tied to the trading, but it's just the fact that everything about the trading is a result of what happens before, and you don't have control of it. Here in Sidereal Confluence, it is totally a game for people like me who are into game mechanisms, into finding a good strategic endeavor, but have moved on from Catan. All of your income in this game is fixed. You know what you're going to be getting in every round. You can see what conversions you're going to be able to make. You can see what conversions are coming out in the future. It does give you that next level of play of being able to hone your skills better, being able to watch a group meta develop. It has the same thing that I've always wanted in my negotiation games, and that is binding agreements.
That's bull crap. I'm calling that now. That's no way, Joe. Man, having non-binding agreements make the game awesome. But go ahead.
That's for you, TC. Yeah. That's like you like that moment where you're like, oh yeah, it was your fault for trusting me. No, in this game, it's like, no, it's not my fault for trusting you. It's your fault because every time I play with you from here on out, TC, I'll never trust you again, and you'll end up being the virus that the entire table quarantines.
Yeah, well, then I have to play more skillfully. That's okay. I'll just surprise everyone by the table.
People in the back.
I don't mind zapping people. I'll zap them in the face too. I don't care.
Well, no, this
game, I want to hear you pronounce the name of the race because I've looked at the races this game and they are amazing. They have the craziest names I've ever seen in any set, like the Kylon Plurocracy or something. That is great.
Yeah, it has
just for that.
Sileons, I think is how you pronounce that one. Trent was the Imdrill. The Imdrill. It sounds like a pharmaceutical.
Yeah. Democracy.
I was the Fodderon. David was like the one with all the K's and J's. And
the Kitzur Kratzel.
I think it's Kyatka. Yeah, it reminded me of something like Yakutsk, like something that would be tough to pronounce. There was one that was just a whole bunch of apostrophes that was like the Cthulhu race, and that was the one that ended up winning. That's the one they recommend for newest players. Very, very interesting, though. The game you play is totally different. Thing about this here is it has the ability to value a trade. Now, every resource is worth something different to every player, but it at least gives you this idea that, hey, 3 of these small resources are equal to 2 of the larger resources, which are then equal in point to 1 of the hexagonal super resources, which is also equal to a single victory point. However, you're not able to trade victory points. But then the game has even further mechanisms to encourage trading, and that is like these donation things that you get where you have to give them away, but you can try to, like say like, hey, I'll give you this if you'll take one of my acknowledgments, which was what I thought was a cool thing that my race had. I could try to trade for people, and I had these just little tokens. I could be like, hey, let's do this trade here. I don't really need it, but I'll do it for you if you take an acknowledgement. And that meant that whenever they discovered a technology, I got a point. And it was like there was no bad thing for them. It was just that I got a point whenever they got, their bunch of points for discovering things. So really cool way that my race was like supposed to be sort of like this race that orchestrated the whole confluence and tried to keep everybody paired on an equal level. It reminded me in a way of that Star Trek episode where they come to this planet that's been totally devastated except for like one house. And they realize that it's an omnipotent being.
Kevin Uxbridge.
Oh man, that to me just blew my mind. Like the idea of this war guild.
Yeah. That's
the idea of my race.
I was a Star Trek geek, but anyway.
Okay, that's the one. Yeah, I just love that episode, and that's what my race basically was. We were supposed to be around for 400 million years, for long enough to literally watch the atoms deteriorate from all of our big cities, and that we have previously fallen into all of these pitfalls of civilization that the other species in the confluence are in the process of trying to do. Like the one species wants to get all the land and stuff like that. So there's this really, really cool thematic basis for all of these different races. That's one of the reasons I heartily recommend it from a thematic gamer's perspective and from a mechanical Eurogamer's perspective. Just don't play yellow. Yellow sucks. I'm sorry to say it, but like this random draw is just not like, it's weird. It doesn't fit with the rest of the game. Everything else is certain. Everything else of the game is a design that is intentional from a design's perspective, but not the yellow 12 decks randomly shuffled. And it's so bizarre to me that they're also supposed to be the most wise of all, and yet you're discovering relic worlds randomly. If it's a relic world, shouldn't I know what's on it? Anyway, the yellow race didn't work for me, but I'm all about Sidereal Confluence. Hopefully that makes sense and gives you an idea. Let's see. It compared, Trent, there was a question here in our comments. Good question, because a great question for you, for you, Trent, because you played them both. How does this game compare to Dune?
Like I said in the chat, it's pretty different than Dune. Dune's dealings kind of the game at Dune boils down to area control in the end. That's really what it's kind of all about. Whereas the deals in this game really boil down to resource conversion, and you're trying to get victory points out of them.
Dune seems to be more about making optimal alliances for area control. I mean, you evaluate the state of the board, and when that card comes out for alliances, which it's one of the few games that, I mean, you're talking about having binding agreements. Dune is binding until it comes up again when you can break it. But that's all you got to evaluate, and you got to convince people to the right group of people to get together so you can get control of the board. That's pretty neat.
I think as another question was, in terms of the importance of the deals, will a bad deal hurt you and a good deal make your game? I don't think there is really a bad deal in this game. It's just like you might get more out of the deal than the other person. Almost always you're trading away something you're not going to be using in a resource converter this turn. It would just sit there and do nothing for you if you didn't trade it. You're trying to get something in return that you can run through a converter and turn into profit. So the worst case scenario is you're trying to run a converter that's a little less optimal than the converter the other guy's running. But in both cases, you're coming out ahead of the rest of the players at the table. So it's most deals in this game are beneficial for both players. The trick is figuring out how to get a set of deals so that you're using everything every round. Because I think that's really the key of it, is trying to get everything used every round as much as you possibly can.
I would agree with that. And the way that you can turn things into other things in previous rounds, like, can really be a cool aspect here. And I think that you're just able to sort of, see like 2 or 3 rounds in advance with other races, what you're going to be able to do with the resources you have. Whereas with mine, it was like my entire goal in the game was to get 4 white cubes and an ice colony so I could turn them into, I don't know until I flip the card.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Well, you're just talking about this being an asymmetric game is really wanting me to break Vast out again.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah, to me, Vast, an interesting exploration that just has no real game to it.
Oh, shut up! My daughter loves playing the dragon. That is such a great
to
game.
me, absolutely, it's a great exercise in interesting game mechanisms. But there's not like, I mean, the way the game is balanced is every single player power is pretty much able to stop every other player from winning. And so it's kind of has that munchkin end of like, oh, I'm about to win. He's about to win. You've got to stop him. You've got to stop him. Okay, we all used up all of our stuff to stop him. Now it's your turn. Oh, you're going to win. Oh, I don't have anything left to stop you. You win. Munchkin.
Wow. Vasta Munchkin. Okay, I'm not even going to touch that one. Moving on. I am not touching that.
Did I just stab you so deep in the heart that you aren't even going to kick?
No, that's just
welcome to being a co-host.
Dude, man, that's just
privileges for you.
I'm just bye, Joe. See ya. Have a nice trip, man. I ain't going there.
I actually like Vast, though. I actually do. I mean, it's a really interesting concept. It really is. It just does not hold. Like once you've played every race, the only thing entertaining about it is to get back into remembering how it works. It isn't really about decisions.
Oh my goodness. Moving on. We're not here to talk about Vast. We're here to talk about what is it? Iberian Rails.
No, that's my hype.
Oh, it's your hype? What are you talking about? Oh, I'm sorry. It's changed. Spirit Island. Gotcha.
Spirit Island, Branch, and Claw.
Your hype is Vanilla Ice Electronic Rap Battle, dude.
Thanks. I'm wondering who
all day to hear about that one.
Oh yeah, no, that one. I've listened to the whole episode of Flip the Table on it, and yeah, you'll have to wait for my hype though, because yeah, I haven't played it yet, so I can't review it. I'm gonna hype or not. I'm gonna hype. Dang it, Keith.
Review.
I am reviewing.
See that dive into that pit with the Vast. It's bad. You got to pull it out of it. Come on, man. Come on. Review.
I feel like yeah. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go here. There's a lot of depth in the expansion to Spirit Island. Expansion to Spirit Island is called Branch and Claw. It's going to add to your game of Spirit Island, which is the cooperative settler destruction game in which you are working together with other players to try to repel an invasion of some sort of potentially European-based colonizers that, you know, with scenarios and adversaries, you can add different European colonies that have different flavors and stuff. Anyway, you take an asymmetric power and you try to work against a fairly well programmed and methodical enemy. And then what you really do to change up this formula is either make the game more difficult or play with new spirits and see how they interact with each other. You're going to be trying to create fear to scare them away and make it easier for you to win the game, because you're ultimately going to be winning the game by removing their presence, and it gets easier to win the game. You have to remove less of the types of presence they have as the game is going to become more and more difficult for the invaders. So at this point, I guess I'll tell you what they add in the expansion, which happens to be 2 new spirits and a slew of tokens. These tokens all represent a specific malady that you'll be able to inflict upon the invaders. So from like specific overgrowth, which makes it so that invaders cannot explore a territory, and instead it's kind of like if you've ever played Pandemic, like the quarantine tokens, where if you would add disease, instead you remove a quarantine token. That's the way that these wilds work. The same sort of way with disease tokens. If an invader is going to build, instead you'll remove a disease token. And then there are infighting tokens. They're called strife. And instead of attacking and pillaging the land and causing blight and damaging the Dahan, the native species, the native inhabitants, which are your friends and will help you to repel the invaders, instead of that, strife causes them to not attack. Strife causes them to, you just discard this token instead of attacking. So all of these different things that these invaders inflict, or that you can do to these invaders now, all these new tokens are largely manipulated by the 2 new races and a bunch of new minor and major powers that all key off of adding and manipulating these tokens to the board. There's also some tokens that represent beasts, and those are tied to the other new mechanism here, which is events. At the start of every round, you will reveal an event, and these events can offer you a choice. In some cases, about 1/4 of the events or so offer a choice, and the other ones will just kind of tell you what you have to do. If you've not listened to, I'd like to steer everybody who's listening to this right now to the video review that I did called the Salin Coefficient, the video review and Salin Coefficient of Spirit Island. I did that. I also did a separate walkthrough video, and then I did critical comparisons to games anywhere from Mage Knight to Catan, including the Freedom the Underground Railroad game and a few others in the middle there. So check out that video if you want to hear how I feel about Spirit Island. I'm just going to try to focus this entirely on the expansion. So these new events, which I kind of referenced earlier, that when I said that about Spirit Island, they're these fear cards, and you don't know what they're going to be until they take effect, and so you really can't plan for them. That's kind of the same idea as what's in these event cards. That almost reduces my opinion of the game. Like, it can be kind of significant, the amount of swings that can happen as a result of the fear cards. And now with the event cards, the swing can be even more. So it feels kind of strange when I flip an event card and that gives me a choice, and that to me feels amazing. And it's like, well, they did that about 7 of the times. And then the other times I flip an event card and it's like, nope, this just happens. And I feel like when I mix that together with, I just did an event, okay, well, now I've got to flip a fear card and see whether or not that works for me. It's like, okay, well, here's 2 random things. How am I supposed to make plans? How am I supposed to, like, now that that's happened, all my plans are changed. And to me, I'm a little bit torn between how I feel about Spirit Island's expansion. I love the way that these new tokens integrate so seamlessly with the base game. They integrate mechanically and thematically. But the beasts specifically are extremely tied to event cards. Like, they don't do anything on their own, really, until you do something with an event card, unless you're specifically getting cards that let you manipulate the beasts. And even then, like, it feels to me like there's not enough beast manipulation to make it really worth it, especially if you're shuffling together the beast manipulation deck together with all the base game, which has nothing, and so you're only getting them about once every 2 to 3 cards. And I just can't fully endorse that specific aspect of the game. It's not giving me what I'm looking for from Spirit Island, which to me is like this really crunchy and interesting puzzle. However, I've not played with it enough to really fully say that the events aren't something that you can manage, but I wonder why some events are choices, and those ones feel super cool because you have these choices that you can make, and it's like, why did the designer say, I'm going to make these awesome events that you're going to be like, oh, are we willing to try to avoid this? And it just feels like there's so much crunchy decisions in there, while these other ones are just like, flip this, here's a thematical basis for why this random thing is happening. So I'm a little bit torn about specifically the events. And so much of the expansion relies on the events and relies on these tokens that I have a really difficult time with it. One thing that the expansion adds that I hadn't mentioned before is it actually does fully realize the Blighted Island effects that were in the base game. There's only 2 different cards. You're supposed to randomly shuffle 2 cards and then choose one to be your Blighted Island effect, which will get flipped whenever the island gets a certain amount of blight. Well, here it adds 7 new cards. So now you actually have a deck to shuffle, not just 2 cards. And these effects range from bonuses that you get all the way down to like horrible things that'll happen to you, depending on how much leeway they're giving you to work with in terms of how long the game can go on because of how much blight is in the game. It furthermore doubles the amount of scenarios in the game, but it doubles it while adding one scenario that is basically just a play the game again and play it with these changes. So it kind of adds a campaign to it a little bit, which doesn't quite feel like it is necessarily what I'm really interested in Spirit Island. It does add 1 new adversary. So the new scenarios are really cool additions for the most part, and the adversary is really great just to be able to play with these new and interesting adversaries. The 2 new powers in the game I feel like are almost necessary. The 2 new spirits are really huge and cool, and they're almost necessary to play with all the like extra added tokens and whatnot. But I'm torn because I feel like the base game itself could have just used those extra Blighted Island cards, and then this extra event expansion, if it was just the events and the tokens, boy, I like it, but I'm adding something I like to something I love. And in a way, it can feel a little bit like it's diluting. And I'm not so sure how I feel about that. I mean, like, thematically, if you are interested in Spirit Island for its thematic basis, yes, go get this. 10 out of 10. But for me, like, I'm playing it for so much of this pseudo-Mage Knight that I feel from it, with actual cooperation. And I feel like when you add these extra events, some of them are amazing, and I have these great decisions, and other ones just feel like another fear card, which is, I don't know, like it's adding another layer of randomness. And to me, the fear was the only part that kind of pushed my random button a little bit. So anyway, I think it's definitely worth the try. Definitely has some really cool things going on. I like a lot that this game adds, but I feel like the integration could be a little bit smoother. And that's what I think of Spirit Island Branch and Claw. Did I say diluting or diluting? It's diluting. D-I-L-U-T-I-N-G. Are they homonyms? I don't think so. Maybe they are in my jargon, not in my jargon, in my accent, my Midwesterner boring accent. All right. Well, TC.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for offering me a copy of Consenticle.
Well, yeah, it seems like you have a lot of, according to this chat here, there's a lot of interest in your beast manipulation. I thought it would be appropriate.
Say beast manipulation again.
Beast manipulation.
Beast manipulation, yeah. It's.
I hear there's a lot of manipulation in Consenticle. I'm just saying. I don't know much. It's just what I've heard. You know, I'm just saying.
Thank you for the transition, TC, because
You're
beast
welcome.
Manipulation sounds quite a bit like a niche.
No, no, I think you might be onto something there, Joe. It's very niche. I think we just agreed on the definition for niche.
I think at least in one circumstance, yes, a niche is something that's not for everyone.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks to everybody in the chat who's letting me know how much beast manipulation is my niche. Yep, that's beast manipulation. Come join the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly Guild.
We'll make a forum. We'll start a thread. Enter at your own risk.
Oh my goodness!
Wow, we just got banned for Board Game Geek, guys. That's awesome.
Well, it was my idea to talk about niches, and I guess I should be the one who tries to define it here, at least with the way they apply to board games. I'm going to define it with examples. TC, do you think war games are a niche?
Probably one that's been around for quite a while. But
are they actually a niche? So you're agreeing to that they are a niche and saying that they're a niche that's been around? Well,
again, it's all going to come down to how we define a niche. Okay.
Okay, I'll do my best here. I think a niche.
Give me what you're giving. I need a precise definition here for this thing, because every time I've heard people talk about this definition has been all over the place. It's like the weight of a game. It's like, oh, good Lord, here we go again.
I would just define niche as something that is going to apply to people that are specifically set out looking for a certain outcome, and it's not going to apply to the larger aspect of consumers. If that makes the larger audience will not be able to appreciate something that is considered niche. I would say like saying something is like a cult classic. Like those are niche movies in many cases. Like when I think about niches that don't apply to the board gaming hobby specifically, I think that like 80s horror movies in a lot of ways. I had a really great friend who may or may not join us here in the chat. He's sometimes able to make it, sometimes isn't, who's now moved away, and he was a great part of our game group. But game group, he was into 80s horror movies and specifically like, John Carpenter movies. But it seemed like when there was a mainstream, like a more mainstream horror movie, like one that more, like applied to a lot of people, it seemed like he kind of dismissed it. Kind of largely like the people, I don't know, in a certain aspect, people that like an artist will hate their most popular music because they feel that it's overplayed. Well, that's the way people feel that are a part of a niche, where they like a specific music or a specific game style, but then there's one within that game style that applies to everybody. Like, for example, like war games, TC, you could probably list to me 5 or 6 different war games that are like your hex encounter, maybe squad level, maybe battalion level, but they're going to be like games that apply specifically to people who self-identify as war gamers, which is something that you do, TC, and something that your wife does. I think that that's a niche, but I think that there's war games that people almost don't consider war games. Like the Coin series is rejected by war gamers. They say it's not a war game. Twilight Struggle is rejected by many war gamers. They say it's not a war game. It applies to more people. It applies to people that aren't necessarily in the war gamer niche. Have I defined niche in any way?
Well, see, I would almost argue that there's not so much as there's niche games as there's niche gamers. Because there are people who only want to play a specific style of game, and that's the only type of game they want to play. And wargamers, most hardcore grognarders that I've run across are definitely that way. They'll be like, they want their hex encounters, they want their like battle charts or DRMs, they want all that. They want dice, but the minute they deviate from what they're wanting in a game, like the Coin series does or Twilight Struggle, you can look at those games and definitely see a lineage to where they took in the mechanics from and they tweaked it to make their own thing. And I think we can even argue that even the more successful board games aren't they apply to a broader audience, so they're trying to get in more gamers. Now it's difficult because I can't, I'm such an omni gamer, I can't say, yeah, this is a war game, and this is and it's a niche game made for my type of gamers. I'm not that way, but there are definitely people out there who are. Another great example of this is like 18xx people. They like that game because it does specific things in a specific way that they like to play. But the minute you deviate from that, I mean, you could possibly argue that Ticket to Ride was a way deviation off of 18. They just like completely stripped out the trade market and just put in routes and victory point track, right? And they just stripped everything out of that. But that game appeals to more people. But some of these other hardcore trained people, like, no, they're looking for certain things in the game, so that makes them more specific gamers than the game. I don't know. Is that making any type of sense whatsoever?
It does make sense. I think that your example, I would compare it more. I would have mentioned like 1846, which you've played, TC.
Yeah.
A lot of like let's go deeper than just, because Ticket to Ride applies. That's like a family game, and there's a lot of, I think, little pitfalls based on your comparison there that I would point out. Like, there's no shared track. The game is about connecting specific routes.
Yeah.
And if you don't connect that route, you get it's goal setting. Whereas in 18xx, it's much more like economic, make as much money as you can.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying there. I'm just saying you could see. I can see like the inspiration where they said they like this thing, but they just like completely stripped a lot of it out and just got what they wanted and modified it in a way. But it's a yeah.
I think that in 1846, a lot of your 18xxers, and Trent will know more about the community than I do, so I really want to hear what you think about this, Trent. But a lot of 18xxers will say, yeah, 1846 is a really good train game, but generally the people who really like 1846 aren't train gamers. So it's like almost like one that really people that are 18xxers don't accept because it so frequently has applicability outside of their niche. People will like 1846 that aren't just train gamers. It's almost like there's a certain litmus test that you have to take to be a trained gamer, and it has to be like, oh, I like 18xx games that aren't 1846. Trent, what do you think about that?
I think that most of the criticism I've seen of 1846 in train gamer circles is that the game moves so fast that you can't do any real stock market manipulation. So that's why people generally don't enjoy it. I think that the engine of 18xx games generally works best in a very long game where there's a lot of rounds for you to nudge the stock market and also nudge the track building. The map is so fast with the double tile lays in 1846, and there's only like 4 or 5 rounds of stock manipulation that a lot of them, the reason it's not popular is that it flows by so fast. I think 18xx community in general is just attracted to longer games because the elements they like in it play out over a lot of long rounds. That's just kind of my feeling on it. So they view 1846 as an intro game.
Sure. But I think a lot of people like will say, you know, like, oh, you like 1846, that doesn't make you a train gamer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They view it as like, trying to think of a good analogy.
Like if you're into board games, but all you know is Catan.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Well,
if you go to game night and someone says Catan is my favorite game, how does that make you? I mean, how do you respond to that? I mean, you think, well, yeah, they're playing a game, but it's Catan.
Oh, let's say I think a better comparison, because to me, like Catan means to me that you've not tried anything else. Let's say Dominion. Like I play, because there's a ton of people that only play Dominion that come at the board gaming hobby from like a competitive card game, and then they got into Dominion, and Dominion's their favorite game. It's the only game that they play. Like that type of person. Is that person still a board gamer if they know Dominion like the back of their hand, play all of its expansions, but they don't really play any other board games? Are they still a board gamer?
I would argue yes. I mean, okay, you're going to hit this hits a button for me big time, Joe, and it really upsets me when I'm like at a game night and someone comes in, they're excited, they got Catan as their favorite game, and they're going, and they just get poo-pooed all over the place. That bugs me more than anything, because we should be encouraging people to play games no matter what they're playing. And if someone's passionate about a game to play it, then you should at least sit down and share their game with them, even if you don't particularly care for it, and then use that as an opportunity, as a bridge to show them other stuff. Okay,
I understand what you're saying, TC. I really do. I don't think that
those people aren't gamers. That's not right.
What if they brought in Monopoly?
I would play Monopoly with them. I just play Monopoly Gamer. I love that game.
So for you, they're no. They brought in their copy of Monopoly, and you have to play that. You can't get to TC. You don't get to say, "Oh, let's play Monopoly Gamer. Let's play this half-an-hour game that does this thing that you want, and that way we're both happy." No. You got to sit there and you got to play Monopoly with all their house rules.
Well, shoot, yeah, I would do it to get them in.
Enjoy that game night, TC. I hope you had fun playing Monopoly by their rules, dude. Like
if that's what they're passionate about, and it gets them into the industry.
But it's because they don't know. It's because they haven't actually.
As an opportunity to get them to know other things.
Well, here's the thing, TC. What we can agree on here is that
based solely on your enjoyment, then what are you doing podcasting? Seriously.
Well, no, TC. No, I'm not saying, here's what we can both agree on, okay? So before you tell me to get out of the industry,
I'm just saying.
Before you tell me that I don't have any, that there's no space for me here, here's what I would say. We have something in common, and that is that we both enjoy having physical people at the table, and we both have like sort of a place to come from. You got to remember, TC, part of me being in podcasting is that I'm playing all sides of an argument here. So I'm trying to plumb the depths of what you've said, and I think I've hit here on you would play Monopoly via a person's house rules, knowing full well that would be your entire game night because you want to encourage the hobby. To what extent do we have this sort of responsibility? You got to remember, TC, I just came from tonight. Earlier tonight, I just ran a high school game night. I do that before my recording every Thursday night. I just ran a high school game night for gamers that are like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. And they, a lot of them, it's an environment that they can really get to see other people. And I went from like when I first started this game night, it was like 4 or 5 kids 2 years ago. Last year, we were getting up to 10 or 12. Now we're fielding 20 kids easily 20 to 25 kids in every night, and I'm getting kids that tell me like at the end of every night, they're like, I'm definitely coming back. And we're getting board games played, we're getting video games played. So I mean, like, what I'm doing for them, though, is I'm trying to just guide them. They need guidance. That person holding that box of Monopoly, TC, if you play it with them, you're doing a disservice to them. It's you, because they don't know any better. All right? They know that they enjoy sitting down with people and they enjoy like the social environment. But the problem is, when I've played something that's not Monopoly, when I've played something that doesn't just go on infinitely with just a dice roll deciding, especially with all these house rules that are made to be played with like younger kids, you know, like, and people don't understand that, like, they're not going to grow within the hobby if they think that that's just what we come together to do. And here's the other thing, TC. What happens if that happens to you this week, and then next week you see the same guy walk in with his copy of Monopoly?
Okay, what do you think? I mean, okay, Joe, we're gonna get real. Let's get real. I do have a game night. I have my daughter. We go to a middle school. We have a game night. I have bring a bunch of kids over. There's a bunch of kids. We have fun. I even play Magic, and oh my God, Joe, you know how much I detest Magic. I hate that game. I would play Monopoly house rules over Magic any day of the week.
TC, you sound like Andy. You sound like Andy. Andy's like, I would play this 4-hour game that I hate, but I can appreciate for this, before I would play this 15-minute game of Codenames.
But man, I will. But I've got a Magic deck. God bless it. I have a Magic deck. It's not a very good Magic deck. It's just one I bought that's pre-constructed. You know what? I'm not competitive. I'm not very good. I get smacked up one side and down the other on a semi-weekly basis with this game. And I'd rather, but oh my gosh, just seeing the joy of these kids come down and they're like, oh, someone who's around my parents' age who are actually engaging with me on a game I enjoy on my terms with my rules, that actually means quite a bit. It really does. And that is a primary source of enjoyment for gaming for me. Oh God, Joe, did I tell you about I told you about the Great Zimbabwe game that went like 3.5 hours.
Yeah. I still don't understand that. That sounds awful.
I was thinking, I am never going to touch a Splotter again. This is it. I am absolutely
It was Great Zimbabwe of all. That's like, I know.
I was like, I am done
That's
with
so
this.
strange.
I am done with it. I am done with Splotter. But you know what? The next week and a half, someone's like, you want to play a Splotter? I was like, okay, sure. I'll do it. I'm going to do it again.
What an interesting perspective you bring, though. And I'm not saying, TC, that I have moral high ground here.
It just makes me feel so. I mean, the reason it touches such a sore spot for me is that I've been on that end of where I've had a game, I've really enjoyed it, and I just want people to enjoy it and have the same amount of enjoyment I have. And it's just constantly getting beat down. I don't want to play it. It's not my style of game. I don't like you. I don't like your game. And it just really, really, really bugs me.
Oh no! When people do that,
off the rails on that, but holy cow!
I'm not trying to say like crap on people for the game. What we got to remember, TC, I'm talking about a niche. I'm not saying that I self-identify as being an 18xxer. I'm not. I do self-identify as being a board gamer. And honestly, you remember the whole thing that sparked this discussion? The question of, is somebody who just plays Dominion with all its expansions a board gamer? My answer to that is I side with you on that, TC. I agree with you.
But have you seen people who like, I mean, you've been to game nuts where people are like, oh, you just played with me and that has no theme. That's a bunch of crap. I'm like, and this guy, they've like bought like every single expansion under the sun and they just go, and you never see that person. They just walk off into the sunset and that's it. And you're like, well, that was cool.
I'll be honest. If the community in my area was infinitely large with all the niches, I'd probably spend most of my time playing LCGs.
Oh yeah,
That's not the truth. The biggest restriction I have on that is lack of community.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
Trent does all he can, trying to get all of his friends to get into him.
Yes, I do, because I really enjoy them.
I'm letting you know right now. We were talking L5R Wednesday. And there's 3 of us. I'm like, you 2 guys have fun and play L5. I'm probably not going to get to. And then the 4th person showed up and goes, I'm probably going to get into that. I'm like, at that point, I just saw all my money fly out of my wallet. But okay, now there's 2 on 2. Now I got a little group. Damn it, I don't have an excuse. I'm going to have to invest in this thing. And And I'm such a completionist. Once I start down this path, Trent, I'm going to be playing with you online. I know where this is going.
Well, here's
another perspective that you bring, that Jonathan, who's not able to make it to any more recordings, but TC, you're bringing back the completionist aspect. So interesting, man. Bad. You're filling so many niches here, TC. Sorry to interrupt, Trent. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I've now played it with my son twice, and as I was coming in here to record, he was trying to build a new L5R deck.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I just want a unicorn deck.
I think I might have someone in my house into an LCG, and if that's the case, time sink.
Yeah. Well, but isn't that the idea, though? I mean, like, here's the thing, man. Time sink. That's what I think every time that I try another challenge for the next time and Through the Ages, the app version, because that's my time sink right now. But like, man, isn't the enjoyment you're getting from that? Isn't that what this is all about? Isn't it about like the moments when we're sitting there, when Trent, you're sitting there in front of a computer screen trying to get one last page finished so you can finish your writing job, or when I'm sitting there looking at a page of, the things I hate doing in teaching is grades. And anytime when it involves grades or paperwork, it's like, this is not what I went to college for.
I hear you, man.
I was not going to college to be a bean counter.
When I was a teaching assistant, that's what, Joe, I respect you so much, because that's the thing that killed that. The thing that made me not be a teacher was grading.
If I ever stop teaching, and I don't ever anticipate this, it'll be one of two things. It'll be either the paperwork and all the number adding and stuff, because that just is not what I got into this for, or it'll be the adults. The adults. It'll be the adults, man. It will never be the kids. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They're the reason that I get up every morning. It'll be the adults. So, but it's the kids, though, specifically, like when it comes to a niche, though, like board gaming itself is a niche.
Yeah, no,
right?
I was going to argue that. It's like, isn't it arguing that niche in the board game is just kind of redundant in and of itself?
And isn't like being a niche inside of a niche, isn't that interesting? But here's the thing, though, TC, I don't think that niches are all bad. I think that, like, you're a biology major, like niches form for a reason, right? There's a reason that you have a niche. It's because you belong in a spot. And I think that what being in a niche can do is like if I know that I've got a group of guys that'll play games that I enjoy, that's kind of in a way its own niche, regardless of whether or not there's any label for you to slap on it that we throw around the hobby. And if I got 4 or 5 guys that all love what I'm doing, that we all can share in that together, we can kind of, in a way, if you start growing together and start like trying new games and all of your perspective starts to shift just a little bit, you feel kind of like, well, I've now got my niche, regardless of whether or not that's wargaming or 18xx groups. I mean, when you start to see these labels is when people go online, and when people are looking, for like people online, they start to use qualifiers to try to find other like-minded individuals and do that as quickly as possible. And I think that, honestly, though, because we do have this niche of board games, and because we do have a podcast and have the just media that we consume, just because even if I'm just a consumer of a podcast and I listen to the Secret Cabal or I listen to the Dice Tower, I can share that with other individuals. And if I mention like, hey, this is a game, like if I know that you know the Dice Tower and I know the Dice Tower, and I'm like, hey, this is a game that I watched Tom Bassel's review of. It sounded like he thought it was pretty cool. I'd like to try it. What do you think? And then you get people on your side, right? You get like other people that know what they're getting into because they're a part of that niche. And it can be, you can honestly, like, each of us is our own unique niche where it's just all by itself, right? So it's where do you stop, grouping people, or I guess not grouping, but separating people. Where do you stop separating people? But the thing is, like, what the way I normally hear the term niche said, and what really set me off, TC, and I think you might be able to share a little bit in this, okay. And you'll find that you were fighting against the guy who is playing devil's advocate, is that there was specific talk, Trent, and correct me if I'm wrong here, of a reprint that GMT was going to do of 18xx games.
Oh, I've heard about this. Is this where they started flipping out because they're like, well, this is going to be widely available. Why did I buy this super hard to get copy?
Somebody owned a hard to find 18xx game that was reprinted, I think 2 years ago. It was at least It was 2 years ago, I think, and it was done by a very, very small publisher, pretty much your print-on-demand prices, which is very common in the 18xx hobby.
Like $140 range.
Yeah. Okay.
120, 100 and something.
I'll jump in here with more specifics because this was the conversation.
Yes.
Okay, so GMT announced on Twitter, just very informally, that they're going to be printing two new 18xx titles that, like they did 1846. They got 2 more coming. One of them is a reprint, and one of them is a new title. That's all they've said. They said they'll be on P500 in the next few months. Okay, so a bunch of people started guessing what this might be, and I guessed that it might be 1880, based on the fact that I follow a couple of the GMT people on Twitter. One of them posted a picture of 1880 recently. And in response to that, some other guy just flipped out, said that it'd be completely inappropriate, and it would be a cold slap into the face to all the people that recently acquired this game. I was like, well, it must be in print then. So I go look and see about 1880, which I've played online before, and so I went and looked for 1880. Okay, so it was reprinted in 2015, and this is late 2017, but it was reprinted and made exclusively available to some people on a small mailing list. And the guy was basically apparently borderline hand-making the copies and sending them out, and they stopped doing it. I mean, it took them like a year to ship them all out, and that's all there was. It was a small hand-printed copy edition or something. And apparently this qualifies as a reprint within the 18xx community, and it's a cold slap in the face if GMT makes a nice edition of it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you serious?
Oh.
And the thing is, I went and looked, could I actually acquire this? No. The only way you can get it is by somebody's trying to resell it for $200 or something.
Maybe
but it's that person who's selling it for $200, Trent.
I know it is. That's the deal.
When you reprint this, when you make
it is. That's the guy's probably the guy trying to sell it for $200.
I was about to say it's probably the guy selling who's the one to fit.
Well, here's the other thing about that, though, is a lot of times these types of reprints from GMT, especially since they're usually done months in advance before the game comes out, a lot of times they'll spark interest in the game and people will immediately want it. And so $200 copy guy is going to get his copy sold because people actually want it and they don't want to have to wait 6 months for GMT to ship it from China.
Well, not only that, but the P500, first they've got to post it. Then they got to get the numbers for it. And then then they got to actually print it. That's like a good... Even if they announced that game right now, it'd probably be a good year and a half before we even saw it in print.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's totally the way that it goes. I think, it'll take a while. I'm not sure how long it'll take specifically because they're talking about like these being straight up reprints and they're not talking about sending them to P500, are they, Trent?
No, they're going to P500 these 2 new games, but I mean,
they're just going to be P500. Okay, so it'll just be like the other P500. You're right, TC. I'm sorry.
I think that GMT has a good idea what P500 games are just going to blow through it immediately. And I think they recognize that the 2 new 18x's probably will. Like, they more or less said they know when a new coin game hits it, that, like, it's going to go so fast. They might as well just go ahead and start treating it as though it's complete.
Yeah.
Because they know, they have a good idea by now what's going to just blow right through.
The hobby has really been collected. Like, these niches have become communities. You know, that's kind of, whereas before there used to be really small pockets in like a Yahoo group. I think there was a joke post on one of I think when we did our recording, TC, of the long view of with Tony Fryer, there was a joke comment somebody who's like, what do you mean the 18xx community is really technologically advanced? We have a Yahoo groups.
yeah, it was something really funny. It was that way.
It cracked me up. And it's like, that's basically, you know, where the 18xx community is. And I would associate the Winsome games very much as a part of it. And I think what's happened a lot with like heavy games, not just heavy games, like 18xx games and war games, because they're niches, it's almost like they've started to like see a mutually beneficial existence where they're kind of together, or at least associated together. And I almost wonder, though, here's a question for you guys, and the right guy to discuss this is not here. The guy who really this is directly challenging. Is there a group of individuals? Is there an interest just in a game because it is niche? That's a niche product. I feel like sells a game to some mindsets out there. And Andy, you're not here, but I'm talking to you. What do you guys think about that?
Well, that's what heavy cardboard's all about, isn't it?
I wouldn't say that that's all that they're about. I think
It's
that
a
there's
large
all
part.
kinds of stuff. Like their latest reviews, they've done Mombasa. I mean, they do a lot of like the big games that are heavy games. I think that heavy cardboard in many ways fills the niche that Tom Bassel is creating by reviewing these games without giving them the amount of energy and time and focus it takes to appreciate them, and then giving them a negative review just because, you know, they're not for him. And I think that in a lot of ways, the vacuum was created, and then that's been filled in a lot of ways by heavy cardboard, which I'm very grateful that they've done with really, you know, with the way that they handle a single episode, talking entirely about one heavy game. I think that's kind of what these heavy games need, you know, when there's that many moving parts, that many things going on to them.
Well, I know that Edward, God bless him, I love him. He's a great guy. But sometimes he'll talk about a game, some kind of weird off the trail game that I consider myself fairly, you know, into the industry, and he'll mention these games. I'm like, why? I've never heard of this thing at all.
And here's the thing, TC, take that to its logical conclusion with what I just said. I think a lot of individuals are sitting there with the same mindset as you. I've heard of everything. I know everything in this genre. Oh, that game that's coming out that has Clemens Franz artwork on it and says Uwe Rosenberg's on it. Yeah, I can tell you that's just going to be worker placement, and it's just going to be it's going to be easier than last year's version was, because all these games are just getting more and more degenerate. But you know what? He just mentioned a game, and I have no idea about it. And because I have no idea about it, all of a sudden, that's where all of my attention focuses, and it sticks to it. Trent, do you believe this ever happens? Have you ever experienced this, or do you think you see this happening?
I think I've seen it happening, but I'm having a hard time pulling up a specific story about it. You got any, Joe?
Well, I would just say Hollandspiel in general, the Hollandspiel brand. Like, there is a very niche war game publisher. Have you any familiarity, TC, with any Hollandspiel games?
Recently, because of Andy, and you're talking about Battle. What was that? Table Battles.
So here's the thing, though. Table Battles is what I would say is a game that I could see all the like I could see Andy losing total interest in Table Battles because it went over well. And I know that sounds weird, but like when I played Table Battles, I was like, oh, well, these decisions are tied to the theme. They make sense. The game only takes 15 minutes. Yeah, what's not to like? And that's the exact same thing, though. That's what I'm getting at. If you can look at a game and be like, oh, what's not to like? You know, that sort of mindset, that sort of like menos mal mindset that is just totally fine. And, you know, like I could show this to anybody and they're not going to hate it because it only takes 15 minutes. They might not want to play it again, but whatever, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But for Andy, it's almost like, and I don't want to talk about him specifically, but for the niche mindset.
What do you mean Andy's here and he's listening?
Is Andy?
Yeah. You remember? I'm Andrew Dennis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you, Andy.
I can relate to Andy at a certain point where I'm really not interested in the game that much unless it punches me in the gut and I go, what just happened? And it just incentivizes me to crank into that game and figure out what's going on. Wherein if it's some game and I'm like, okay, I see what's going on and okay, but man, a game like Churchill, the first time we played that game, I stunk at it. I didn't know what I was doing. It kicked me up and down, left and right. I was rolling on the floor. I had bruises and man, I got up and wanted more. Arkwright did the same thing. I was like, I don't know what just happened here, but I got hosed. I need this. Maybe I'm just a masochist. I don't know.
I think what I'm getting at more, TC, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like getting punched in the gut by a game definitely can be specifically something that works more for some players than others. Yeah. And I think I'm somewhere in between you and, you know, the person who gets beaten and refuses to ever play again. I think I'm more on your side, though, because when I lose at something or when I suck at something, that usually is motivating for me. But it's not quite like you, TC. A lot of times I'm sitting there picking apart the pieces of the game, and if I pick apart the pieces of the game and I see that I failed and it was me, then I love the game. If I pick apart the pieces of the game and I think it comes down to something trivial or something random, oh no. Oh no!
I take a bigger picture of the game. You're going micro. I go macro. I'm like, okay, this little thing tripped me up, and it could be random or something, but I miss something in the bigger picture here. There's got to be something. Sometimes I find it, sometimes I don't. I'll be honest. I'm like, oh, okay. I did like that. There's been several games where like, oh, I didn't miss anything. Oops. Maybe I'm just bad at it.
I would say that like when I reacted positively to table battles with Andy, I got this feeling like now he wasn't all that concerned about playing it anymore. And I don't know if it was that he wasn't that interested in it or what, but instead he moved on to like the other games from Hollandspiel that are like much more, like a 4-hour game that he told to me is like, well, it's kind of like Time of Crisis. And it's like, we already know where that goes.
We lost him.
Yeah.
Well, it was really interesting as we're talking about niche games, and it's really funny because you would think like GMT would make most of their money. They're known primarily for war games. And you think they would most of their money in games would be hex traditional war games, but talking to some of those guys up there and looking at what sells, it's not their traditional war gamers that are moving that company.
What sells, exactly. That's their critical mass.
Dominant Species is huge. Coin's been tremendous for them.
Exactly, but your war gamers like Coin is not a war game.
Yeah, but it's GMT's when the GMT's top selling games. It's like the fact that GMT's diversified. And since everybody, some of these war gamers kind of forget, I like to tease them about because I like pushing buttons. It's like, look, if it wasn't for the success of the Coin games, they would not be making these traditional hex battle games that you like so much because they aren't making money for the company more often. That 1846 was huge for GMT. It was huge. The P500 on that blew away. And more so than most of any of those hex games I've ever seen on GMT. I'm like, I should tell you. It was the fact that they're diversifying that lets them make their more specialized games.
Absolutely, dude. But is that the same way that we should feel as board gamers when our board game stores are keeping their doors open because of Magic?
Oh yeah. Well, if it keeps my game store open, I just I won't. I just won't go to those events. But I'll tell you what, Trent, if they had our local game stores having and I don't know if you know this, but in 2 weeks they're having the L5Rs having their is premiering, and there's like kits for learning to play kits, and they signed up for it. I'm in. I'm like, boom, I'm going to this. But if having Magic players there lets them have this event, I can't complain. I can absolutely not complain. I mean,
I don't think I can complain, but here's the thing though, like to what point, like, are we just a little niche in this, hobby that's run entirely, that's kept running because of essentially
Magic and Pokemon?
Cracking packs, man. I'm telling you, like, I totally disapprove of that. I think of it as gambling. I think it's just as bad as going and pressing a button, putting a coin into the one-armed bandit. I mean, it's, to me, the game itself, I'm not judging that at all. Entirely just the distribution model, but that's what keeps everybody open. And, like if you are a part of a niche like we are, should you be talking out against the majority, when your game company that you enjoy so much comes out with something that bridges the gap between your niche and a larger board gaming subset, or set, just the entire board gaming population, shouldn't you be excited that there's going to be more attention for your niche? And I think that's exactly where, Trent, this story about 1880 and the frustration that this game is going to be available really irked me. I've got a short story to tell, but it's going to transition us into our hype. So I want to hear what you guys have to say, like kind of just last thoughts about what do you guys think, benefits, drawbacks of being in what's considered a niche.
I think people, once they get too deep into a niche, they begin to forget what the rest of the outside world will look like. I think that there's a lot of people who play 18xx a lot, and that's their lifestyle game, have become accustomed to the idea that some of the arcane rituals needed to summon an 18xx game are not exactly like the way other gamers deal with the world. Like, other gamers are not going to go hunt down some small little mailing list to be on so that you can order a game in time. That's not something that like anybody other than like 100 people might ever do. And I think once you're in that group of 100, that begins to seem like the normal way of doing things. And other people who think that's an arcana I'm not willing to practice and manage like the hand symbols for. Like
like a Mason's Guild.
Yeah. I mean, like it feels like it's a Mason's. I mean, people aren't going to bother with all the rituals. They're going to think that the rituals are the normal way of doing things, and people are not willing to do the rituals are somehow like
uninitiated.
The uninitiated like almost don't deserve the games then, and I think that's end up being skewed from being on too far into a niche for too long. I've got that feeling.
Community.
I have a feeling that about that like that a lot from 18xx community at times. Is that there's a lot of that like almost arcana about it. It's like, and if you aren't willing to like memorize the spells and whatever, you're not gonna like get the reward. I mean, you're not gonna be a part of the community. And the thing is, I like playing 18xx, but there's a lot of hoops involved with it that I'm not willing to jump through. I like playing the games, and I'll like if they're available from a reasonable retailer, I'll get them. But I don't really have any interest in making print and plays. I don't really have any interest in jumping through a lot of the hoops that you have to get some of the interesting titles. It's just not worth it to me. I'll go back and play 1830 again. It's fine with me. I mean, I just think people can get lost in niches and lose track of what gaming is like for people outside the niches.
Mm-hmm. But does it matter to them though? Are they to the point where they're just like, meh, whatever? They're not.
Well, if they were at that place, they wouldn't be so vocal about it. What I've discovered, maybe you can back me up on this. I don't know. It seems like it's the smallest group that yells the loudest sometimes. Yeah. You know. Mm-hmm. So these people are like freaking out. Like it's just like the vast majority of people are like, cool, new 18x games I can get. Like I was thrilled. I'm like, I'd love to get my hands on a nice new 18xx game from GMT. That's great. It never would have dawned on me to flip out about it, and most everybody I know didn't. But it's always like this vocal minority. I mean, Reddit's full of people like this.
I have mastered the level 8 furry magic arcana, so I am thus special.
Trent is able to. Yeah, he's able to pass between the barriers.
Yeah,
he is a ghost walker.
Arcana are no longer worthy. Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think that there is some of that, and I see it in the 18xx community. Whether or not they recognize it themselves or not, I don't really know. I think some of them do. I think some of the more really self-aware ones do. But I mean, I feel a lot as someone who enjoys the game, but is not really a part of that community as an online community. I just like playing the games.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that funny? It's just I got 1846, and I've never played an 18xx game. I played it, I loved it, it was great, and I'm like really getting into this game, right? I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, my group's really liking it. Carissa, who's like this historical war gamer who thought 1846 was like some historical war, and I pulled a bait and switch and gave her like a train game, which is amazing. We were all digging it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bring this out, and and then some other people should be like, oh, that's not a real 18xx game. I'm like, it's real enough. It exists. I'm touching it. It like seems to exist in space and time. I'm missing something here. What's going on? You guys wanted me to play these games, and now you're criticizing me for it? Wow.
Because it's no longer special to them.
Yeah.
There are some within the 18xx community that are really good at playing with people that aren't strictly a part of that community. They're very welcome and opening. But man, there are some that's like, show me your spells before the Stonemason Guild. And I'm like, no, I don't have any interest in that. I really don't.
And then we're harping on 18xx, but there's Magic players that are that way. I mean, it's not there's
war gamers Magic. And I think the reason we're harping so much on 18xx is that our counterbalance for 18xx, Andy just isn't here. So I mean, like, I don't want to make this like let's crap on 18xx, because I specifically have a few other points. Like Magic can get that way really, really. Like honestly, when somebody walks in the store, I've played Magic once, right? When somebody walks in the store, in the game store, and I'm sitting there, I feel like I'm the one who's open to them. Like, if you want to come over here and play board games, come here. That'd be so awesome. Like, when people come in, I'm like, hey, are you interested in board games? And it's gotten to where I almost don't really ask that, because one of the game stores that I play at most of the time is considered a Magic store. It's not a game store. It's a Magic den. And so like when I ask people, a lot of times they'll just kind of like snigger and dismiss me. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not into that stuff.
No,
And
I'm sorry to spend $400 on cardboard crack.
Yeah,
Oh my
cardboard
God,
crack.
like-
I'm gonna build a deck and crush you because that's my enjoyment in life is
here
crushing
I
you with
am.
lots of
I'm
money.
open to you though. And if you come in there and like, oh yeah, I'm here to try board games. It's like, cool. I'm Joe. What's your name? It's great to meet you. And that's such a big and integral part of it. And I see it from Magic, and I see it on BGG from the wargaming community.
The war
BGG
gamers are pretty
wargaming
bad.
community
I will give
is
you that.
Oh, it's vile. It can be really, really insular. And I mean, it's like you have to pretty much say, these are all the wars that my ancestors fought in. These are all the memorabilia that I have before you'll even get anybody to take you seriously.
I've been involved in games. That's a few games of where it's like I make 3 moves, and the other guy just laughs and is like, you're dead in like 4 moves. And it makes me mad, and it makes me more mad because he does it, right? It's like crap. Because he knows that game inside out. But then you go to that same guy who crushed you at Paths of Glory. You're like, hey, why don't we try this other game? Like, no, we're just gonna play Paths of Glory again. Oh,
yeah. Well, it's the same way with
that.
people though that only play chess. Isn't it like that with people who only play chess? And here's the thing, TC. Here's the thing. What if you're somebody who's a tournament chess player and that's the only game that you play? That's the only game that you play.
And you better find a group.
No, I understand that, but like, what happens when somebody walks in that is very interested in playing chess, but they're brand new? Are you actually going to be able to enjoy yourself playing chess with them? I mean, you're going to crush them mercilessly because you know where that, like, you start, you know for a fact that this person, maybe it's like a 13 or 12 or 14-year-old kid, and you know that you're just going to crush them mercilessly unless you take off your gloves, or unless you put on, extra padding or something like that.
Mitts.
Like, what is this though, TC? Where does the responsibility, like, where does it end? Where does it lie? Like, are you playing Monopoly with house rules every single game night for an entire year of your life because that first time that guy came in, you led him to believe that that was what you enjoyed? And so because you led him to believe that, he keeps bringing it back. Now he thinks you're his best friend, and your entire friendship is built on this game that...
Well, you got to be upfront and make sure it doesn't start that way. I always preface if anybody who walks into the store and everything is like, yeah, I'll play your game. It's cool. I'm really interested in what you have. However, I do enjoy a variety of board games, and it's a very rare occasion I will play the same game.
What a snob!
Yeah,
what a snob!
I'm like, well, that's just a lot of that has to do like the chess player and all that. It's just a lot of that depends on the personality of the person teaching the game and what they want to do. I mean, there are competitive people out there. They love teaching new people just to crush them and show them how much better they are at the game than you are. I am not that personality type, and I know you guys aren't either. But
I am.
Are you? Sweet Trent. You want to play L5R and crush my soul? Let's do it.
Yeah. I am. Whenever I play any of these Joe or Jonathan in Game of Thrones, I just want to crush them.
Well, yeah, you would because I know the game, and you know that it's not like Like your first game with me though, there was very much so like, hey, I'll help you make sure you know the rules. Yeah. If you do something absolutely idiotic, I'll let you know what's going on.
I change if I know the people at the table get the game.
Yeah,
I will become a very different gamer at that point.
But you also have options. Well, if you're a hardcore Magic player and you're a hardcore chess player, there are avenues for that, right? There are appropriate avenues.
There are niches, dude. That's what I'm saying. They're niches.
What'd you call it? See, here we go with definitions again. I don't know. I'd call Monday Night Magic a niche. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's just a bunch of people who like playing the same game over. And I understand wanting to play a game at a competitive level that I mean, there can be a lot of enjoyment to come out of that. I mean, there are a few games I like. Me and Carissa play. Like, we know the game. We're like, the gloves are off. We are just gonna go at it. I like that, but I'm not gonna. But unless I know the person and it's like a first play, I'm not gonna be that way right off the bat. That's just me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think what you're saying now, TC, is starting to touch on like some of the positives of being in a niche, which is like, you get to play the games that you want. Like you don't have to deal with it's all signal and no noise, and that's what it can feel like. And the thing is, like, I don't think Andy is any different than anybody else. I think what happened to Andy is that he needed to play heavy games to feel like he was enjoying himself in this hobby. For him, just saying I play board games isn't enjoyment yet. And it's the same way for me. Just saying, oh, I play board games, sure, go ahead, get out Scrabble. I know all the 2-letter words in the English language. Like it's not for me, it's about something very different. Like I'm looking for specific things from this hobby, and we all come at it looking for different things. And I think though that if you relegate yourself to a niche, your benefit is that you're going to just get to play that and play that well. But I think, guys, even if you do play with a niche like you do, Trent, you acknowledge that you play in the 18xx niche, but it doesn't mean that you're totally broken. That's the only thing that you play. Like, just because you can say something in a group of 18xx players and make everybody around you laugh doesn't mean that that's the truth that everybody else who's not in your group needs to now understand. And you need to go like tell everybody, oh no, like 18xx is the best game ever. Or like we could even say like thematic games are better or Euro games are better. It's just different strokes for different folks. Niches can help you find those folks, but at the same time, like the games that transcend the niches are the ones that do the best for these companies. And I think honestly they're the ones that get the best critical response in a lot of ways too.
Yeah. Like, for example, if I ever got to play with you guys and I'm playing Andy and I'm playing 1834 and I've only played it twice, if Andy's not giving me junk companies and rusting my trains and smashing me into oblivion, I'd probably look at him and go, are you enjoying yourself? Because you're are you
actually playing, Andy?
Yeah, like, don't feel you have to hold back on me, man. Just go for it. And if we were playing like Twilight Imperium, Joe, and I was like playing the super aggressive race and I'm being all nice about it, you probably think I'm doing something like what TC what are you doing? And a lot of that comes down to like the group you play with and who you want to play with, and it's also very conditional. It really is.
I would just say the biggest thing I think we've specifically come down hard on 18xx and Wargamers, and I don't think it's fair to just single them out. I think that they're ones that
we did Magic too. With. Don't forget Magic.
Magic we did too, but we did it a little bit. I think though that just anybody, any place in the hobby can get into this sort of a groupthink, insular community niche, and there's benefits to that, but do not lose who you are. Do not lose sight of the fact that you still have the same DNA code as everybody else there at the table. You still, well, not the same DNA code, but you still, you're 99.999% the same as everybody else there. And don't forget that, because, really getting people to your niche is going to require you to not lose sight of the rest of the human race.
No, Joe, I'm a special snowflake.
You are a snowflake, Trent, and I think that's great. I think there's a place for snowflakes, and it's a very beautiful thing. You just don't want to get it too hot because it's not beautiful anymore. It's kind of
So I'm going to finish here with my story and work us into our hype here, and that is that I would share my own experience of where I'm at right now with a game that I just received, and I'm incredibly excited to play again. I only got to play it once, but TC, this seems to me like you'd be super thrilled with this game. Trent would be thrilled with this game. Andy'd be thrilled with this game. And I could name a dozen other people that aren't economic gamers, that aren't specific war gamers, that aren't in any certain niche, that would really like this game, though it does carry a sort of economic train game, a little bit of that lineage to it. But I think it does a lot to spread itself further. And this is a small Kickstarter that I participated in a year or two ago, and its goal was only $10,000, and it funded almost 3 times that goal. The name of the game is Iberian Rails, being published by Monsoon Publishing for the first time they've ever released a game. I just received it on like Monday and played it on Wednesday, and was just, oh man, dude, I was just getting all sorts of it was hitting on so many cylinders, so many synapses in my brain were just like, Trent's going to love this. Andy's going to love this. TCA would love this. If we could ever fly him here to Iowa, which we should do when it's super cold here. So that way you can learn how all of us are snowflakes and we never melt because it's cold.
That's okay. I'll just come wet because it's raining here all the time.
Well, you're going to freeze and you're going to catch your cold. So you're going to catch your death of cold.
Playing a train game. Sounds like a win-win all around.
So Iberian Rails had a small Kickstarter print. And it delivered, and I received it, and I immediately like unpacked it, and I started looking at, like, well, the contrast on these tiles isn't that great. There's some of these production issues. There's some production issues, but none of that stuff ever clouded the fact that I kept seeing like no, this game is very functional. It's missing player aids. It needs some things that could really have improved it that would have maybe from a bigger company happened, but it just had so much potential. And when I played it, it was amazing. I was just so into every moment of what was happening. I felt like a mixture of modern art and a Cube Rails game. And it just also added role selection, and it had me making so many different interesting decisions. I absolutely adored it. And here's where my brain went after you told that story, Trent, of a guy jumping on you for like, oh, this was a small print run or whatever, right? I got Iberian Rails, and I paid whatever list price for it. I paid almost $60 for it, and it's not the biggest game I've ever bought. It's not got the nicest components, but man, do I love that game. And if tomorrow I were to see online that a U.S. distributor picked it up and was going to sell it for a fraction of what I paid for it, you know what I would think? What would you guys think?
I think it'd be great because Kickstarter games usually need more people to look at the rule book and things get through, and usually a professional editor is really good. But yeah, I would. Anything that you like that gets a wider distribution, I think that's always good.
I'm with you there 100%. What do you think, Trent?
I agree. I would. If a game is good and it gets a wider distribution, that's a cause for celebration.
It's a cause for celebration. Exactly. Like, yes, it'd be a little bit bumming, you know, like I'd be like, oh man, I kind of want those nicer pieces. Now I'm going to be stuck with my first edition. And in the next edition, they came with player aids that were printed on the inside of the player boards. And that way it was just kind of like all right there at your fingertips. But you know what? The game isn't going to change. And the game, to me though, I don't think of myself as like, oh, I've got this extra special copy first edition. I mean, maybe it'll turn into that, but I'm not hoping for that. I just want more people to enjoy this amazing game because, and honestly, I want to be one of the individuals that helps to get that out, get that information out. And that's why I podcast, TC, to answer your question earlier. That's why I'm here.
You do it to make me angry. I understand. I understand your true motivation. It's good. You don't have to justify it.
When you ask me to, I do. The thing is, though, I would be thrilled if that were to happen. That's not happened. So I guess calling every publisher that listens to us, this here is a place you might want to try. At least try playing this game. Because the reasons that they sold this on their Kickstarter really spoke to me. There was like 5 things we did to balance this game. That was one of like the big selling points was like we've play tested this game hundreds of times. We think that it plays well. We're going to try to give you the best product we possibly can. It's our first time, but man, this game is great. And you know what? The game that I played on last night, fit that bill. All the other pieces and stuff, those are negotiables. But the game itself, that is what they delivered on. And I would think that a bigger publisher or, you know, a better, just a bigger distributor, somebody who has more experience, or just even the same company learning from their prior experience to do a reprint, a second edition that looks better, that would make me thrilled that more people get to play what I believe at this point is a great game. So that's my hype, Iberian Rails.
Well, I thought it was going to be Vanilla Ice something or other. I'm disappointed. I thought it was going to be something else. The Jeff Foxworthy?
Jeff Foxworthy, right? Bible Battle, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think probably Vanilla Ice Electronic Battle Rap has a larger distribution than Iberian Rails. Are you sure you don't want to talk about that instead?
Probably, man, but like mass market, oh my goodness. No, there's a rabbit hole, TC, and I'm going to wrench you out of it. I'm grabbing you by your bunny ears, and I'm going to tell you it's time for you to talk about Arkwright Jr.
Oh, yeah, that's great. You know, actually, it's called, they renamed it. It's My First Arkwright. It's pretty sweet. It's basically a game where you play Richard Arkwright and you get families in to work your factories and employ 7-year-old children, and you get knighted for it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. You're talking about Kickstarter. So the game I actually wanted to talk about is another Kickstarter that just got funded that I really enjoy that not a lot of people talk about. And then the designer of it's locally lives up here, Levi Moat, and that's Horizons. It's a 4X game that plays in like under an hour or around an hour. And it's really fun. There's a lot of interesting things. It's quick. You're exploring planets, you're finding them. I don't want to get too much into it, but I think the Kickstarter might be done, but it blew past all its stretch goals. And if you can get when this comes out, if you guys can actually find a copy and play it, I'd be really curious to see what your guys' reaction are on it, because I sat down with it thinking absolutely nothing. I was like, oh, yeah, 1 hour 4X game. Yeah, right. I can give me Twilight Imperium. I want a real 4X game. What Scythe again? And I was really impressed with what he pulled off with that game. So that's my hypeness. Horizons by Daily Magic Games, designed by Levi Moat.
Cool. You heard anything about that, Trent?
I've not heard about it. Nope.
And that's my iPodcast. It lets you guys know about 4X games.
Hold on. Now that I buy it, are you now going to move on because it's no longer special to you?
It's dead to me now. I've already talked about it.
Keep Portland weird, TC. Keep Portland weird. Keep board games weird. Keep 18xx niche.
Just to sidetrack this a minute. Have you guys noticed one of the things that I think's funny is these people who like get these hard to find games and thinks they're great. You're like, hey, why don't you bring it to like a game night and we'll try it out? And they're like, I don't want to bring it out because it might get dented or dirty or it might impact the condition of my game. I'm like, if I can't
they're not a
hold of it,
they're a collector. That's what I would say.
If you think it's great and you want to talk about it, but you don't want me to play it and I can't get a hold of it, we're kind of like at a dead end here. I'm like, what we do?
That's a niche within the hobby as well. People who are collectors. You got people who are looking at it from a business standpoint of how to gain capital by keeping a collection. You got other people who are just collectors, which sounds like to me, TC, you might be a little bit of a collector, Mr. Gotta catch 'em all.
Well, I'll catch them all, but I sure as heck will share them all and let you play with my toys. I'm not going to keep it to myself and say, look at my toys on the shelf still in shrink wrap. Dude, if I'm collecting everything, you bet your butt I'm going to have all those things broken out of shrink. They're going to be shuffled without sleeves. I'm going to play the crap out of that thing because I just spent a fortune and my wife's going to kill me if I don't do that.
I'm with you there, man.
Anyway,
and let's round out our hypes with the newest game coming out from Spielworks, and one that I'm quite interested in, but I think, has it also got a U.S. publisher? Well, Trent's going to tell us the answer to that question and more, maybe.
I don't honestly have no idea whether it has a U.S. publisher, but it just arrived in my mailbox yesterday, and I was on the verge of playing it last night, but things kind of went pear-shaped with child issues. I'm talking about Gentes. I think that's how you pronounce it.
It'd be Gentes if it was Spanish, and it means peoples.
Gentes?
Gentes in Spanish.
I was close. Gentes.
But I don't know if it's Spanish or not. I don't know who.
Oh.
It might be Gentes. That would be Portuguese.
Or I could just totally Texify it and call it Gentes.
Oh, I forget that you come from there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I can get my accent
that
back.
Way.
Got that gold Gentes game?
Trent,
okay.
What is Gentes about?
It's okay. So it's a civilization game. I would estimate, from reading the rules and like looking at how it works, I would estimate, and this coincides with the rule book, that's about 30 minutes per player. It plays 2 to 4 players. It looks to me like it's just. It looks to me like a very interesting Civ game that centers around a time mechanic. The time mechanic weirdly reminds me of Thebes. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
I am familiar with Thebes. Yeah, the one where you like spend a certain amount of time and get to take a certain amount of actions.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, but there's a lot of other Civ-oriented stuff going on. The art on it is... I like the art on it. The art on it kind of weirdly reminded me of Mare Nostrum. I don't know what it was. I think it was maybe the map was the fact that the regions were in different colors and it was in the same similar area of the world as Mare
With the army's disembodied heads?
No.
It looks a little bit like Great Zimbabwe from the cover.
But the board itself was what reminded me of Mare Nostrum. I think it was because of the region of the world that it uses for the map.
Sure, the Mediterranean.
It just looks like it's a game where you use up your available time and you're kind of, I guess... You're kind of borrowing from the future a little bit to do stuff. It's really interesting how it all seems to tie together. It's hard to describe. It's one that I think I'm going to have to play through. But it seems like a lot of it's trying to decide how much you're going to borrow ahead from the future. And that means your future turns are going to kind of be shortchanged a little bit. You have some of your time tokens are double-sided. So if you decide to use them this round, they're actually weaker in future rounds. So like you have all the time tokens you're going to use this round and next round sitting out there. Your next round tokens on the double side. You can kind of partially use them this round, but if you flip them,
but then they flip over and they suck from here on out.
Yes, the game is centered around that.
Interesting,
and it looks to me there's a lot of different things going on that you can do with the time. It looks to me like there's not a ton of I want to say it. It's not very random. It doesn't have a high degree of randomness on it.
Well, Trent, you've sold me on this. I'm interested.
I don't know. I'm iffy.
I don't know. It seems really interesting. I hope to play it with you on Sunday. If I've got the whole thing finally punched out and read through, I will bring it on Sunday and try to play it with you, Joe.
Since it's a Spielworks game, what did you have to glue together to make it work?
Not that it was mostly just cardboard chits. Unless I've missed something, it's just.
There wasn't a wheel that you then had to like literally paste together with something else.
Oh, no, that's high taboo.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you guys are playing these games for me and let me know if it's worthwhile. It's always difficult this time of year for me for S, and I call it the dry heave season for me because like all these dry Euros come out, and I just have to rely on you guys to point me in a direction.
I'm glad I was able to fire a shot or two at you with the old Munchkin. The Munchkin comparison.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate when you guys could like steer me in a direction because I'm just like I have no idea about any of this. So
well, I don't know if some. I mean, like to what degree though is it that you're looking for something? Like are we in different niches? Sometimes are we? Is it that like when I say this is really good, you should maybe think to yourself, steer clear of that, because we need knowledge.
No, I mean if you guys are playing it and enjoy it, I may flip you a bunch of crap just to be funny, but I mean that's why I like Capstone. I mean Clay, he like gets all these games I would never even touch, and he brings them over, and I can A, get them at a reasonable price, B, don't have to worry about component quality. Because wasn't Arkwright a Spielworks game? I'm pretty sure it was.
Yes, Arkwright was a Spielworks game. So was
High Taboo.
Colon, yeah. Colon Colony, I think, was too.
Hyper Splint or whatever it's called. Yeah, these games have like.
Yeah.
And so was the Ruhr, and Solarius Mission hasn't been brought over yet, has it?
No, it is not. But that was a Spielworks.
But it's the Ruhr, like Ruhrschifffahrt is what it was called. So yeah, there's been several Spielworks games that Clay has brought over, and I am with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I may not particularly care for Arkwright, but I'm sure as hell glad I got an opportunity to play it and experience it.
Arkwright's probably in my top 25 or 20 of all time. I really like Arkwright,
which Trent's never going to actually make.
Yeah, which I may not like it, but I sure as hell would like to play it with you, Trent, since you like it so much. I mean, so that's why I like about you hardcore Euro guys and stuff. It's like you guys steer me in a direction, and I may not like the game as much as you, but I guarantee you I'll enjoy playing it. And this Gentes game, yeah, that sounds pretty neat.
Okay, and I will say that I was reading through a write-up of it online just now, and people were saying that its weight is comparable to Concordia and Keyflower, and I would agree with that reading the rule book. That's about the weight.
That's not bad. Huh.
Around that weight level, yeah.
Well, I'd be all about it. I might try to even read the rule book myself before getting there, just have an idea. So, thanks for telling me about that one, Trent, and I'm excited now to hopefully get it played. I'm going to bring Iberian Rails, and I really am going to push for that one. I'm not going to lie. So I'm going to push for Iberian Rails pretty hard, which I haven't pushed a game in a while, so I feel justified.
I'm not sure I'll even be ready to teach Gentes on Sunday. I might just say, screw it, I'll play Iberian Rails. So
the way that we'll find out. We finished our game, Trent.
Just teach your game.
Well, Trent, we finished a game, and one of the brand new players who'd never played a Cube Rails game, never played a train game before, said, "I'd really like to play this one again." Like as the game was getting done, it's pretty promising. So, and that was with a non-Cube Railer. So it'll just be depending on whether or not it's too much. If it appeals to too wide an audience, obviously Andy can't like.
I do have a question. Have you ever played a Crayon Rails game?
Not a Crayon one. Nope.
Okay, that will be corrected sometime in the next 3 or 4 months, I predict.
Let's do it. I'd be all over that, man. Have you played one, TC?
No, I'm just hopeful to get Three Kingdoms out. I have what I'm calling the Three Kingdoms curse going on right now. I have yet to play a complete game of that, and then we've started it at least twice.
Oh,
and
well,
for various reasons, we have
you
never
never finished it. Well, don't you usually? You just say you usually get 3 people to play. Like 3 people's a pretty common number for you, right?
The first time we played it, Carissa wasn't feeling well, so we had to call it. The second time we had it out, Steven's better half couldn't get into her apartment, so he had to leave, so we had to call the game. I brought it to a game night twice and got overvoted on it. So I'm just like, dude, this is like the game I can never play. It's bugging me. I've got to get this game on the table.
For us too. Like 3 people for that long, it's almost an event game. Because I mean, I love the game, absolutely love it, adore the game, but it's really, really tough.
Yeah,
so
it's like when I do get the 3 people, like this event happens, I'm like everything comes together. It's like denies me. I'm like, crap, man, I want to get this game. And every time I started and played, I'm like starting to get more into it and liking it. And then it's just like the rug's yanked out from underneath me. I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
In fact, Wednesday night I brought it, and I had this horrible choice. There was 3 people. Like, hey guys, what do you want to play? He's like, oh, I said, I brought 3 Kingdoms. I'm ready to play this. I know. He goes, yeah, but don't you have Star Trek Ascendancy in your trunk? Yeah. Well, we want to play Star Trek. Well, god dang it! I want to play. We can't play. Fine, we'll play Star Trek since that's what you want to play.
No, TC. I want to play Monopoly with house rules.
Okay. What edition? What edition?
Kansasopoly.
Kansasopoly or Oregonopoly. Now I may have to draw the line at Texopoly.
USAopoly, the Americopoly.
Texas version of Monopoly of house rules might be near, and I might have to like pass out from I don't know. I probably wouldn't physically make it, but not for lack of trying.
Wow, what a snob!
I am. I'm a snobber. You and your Euros, your dry heavers. Yeah,
dry heavers.
I don't like your dry games. But
wow.
No, like I said, I really appreciate like you guys that go the extra mile to get these games that are not even in English, import them at this ridiculous price, bring them in just thinking they might be a good game. I'm like, wow, that's a roll of the dice, man. And that's coming from someone who doesn't like rolling dice. That's wow. Okay.
You do like rolling dice.
Yeah, but you don't.
That's no, I'm not the one who does that. It's Trent who brought it in, man. Trent's the one who like he's the one who I'm excited to play it with. Like I'm benefiting as well. So yeah, I'm definitely like much more. I don't feel like I'm in a specific niche, and that's why this episode was called "Niches Get Stitches."
So Trent, do you import games?
Some. I mean, Gentes was imported, I guess.
Cool. But
that one looked pretty good, though. You were able to read the rule book.
I'm assuming you research it first before you go jump off a bridge.
I don't import stuff unless I've pretty heavily researched it, and I was feeling very good about Gentes.
If it gives you an idea, though, we've filled some of the gaps just between the 2 of us because I backed Iberian Rails after I read all the info from the Kickstarter page, and you backed Gentes. We're both, I think, willing to play the other one, based on what we know, and then maybe in the end we'll find out we both have games that we like, that we all are upset that we didn't take the extra effort and back, or
I only backed Horizons because I actually played the game with the guy who designed it. I wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. I certainly wouldn't have done it just hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, are you familiar with something called Sasquatch that happens around here in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, he hangs out in the forest and you go hunt him.
Yeah, well, that's the popular version. Up here, they send these guys out to Essen just to be mules, to like get all these games and bring them back, and they have this little convention to play them all. And I'm always impressed with the people they send out to do this. I'm like, I don't know if I could.
That's just basically BGG Con.
Is it? Okay.
I wish that I could go to BGG Con.
What they do, the thing I really love about BGG Con is like they probably set up probably around 50 to 100 tables. I don't know, somewhere in that area, where it's basically just like the top 25 games from Essen set up around the clock permanently. And when people get done playing it, they reset the game, get up, leave the table. Some more people sit down and play it.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard last year that Travis and I don't know who they were like just livid for the colonists, and like they couldn't get a hold of it at BGG because someone was always playing it, and they were just like losing their minds over it.
I mean, there is that. I mean, if one game is really, really hot, they usually have 3 tables of it, but then those tables are filled constantly. You kind of almost got to camp them.
Yeah, camp them. Like when I see episode 1 and realizing it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah. No, I think, there's definitely like, you'll get more if you're more open to the different niches in the hobby. Yes, you'll end up trying to get roped into a game here or there that may or may not be the experience you're looking for. But keep your mind open, keep your game group as open as you can. And is there anything you guys have to say here before I close the episode?
I played Fireball Island, and it was awesome.
All right. I hate you.
I just want to throw that out there randomly.
I hate you.
Yeah, I know. I love you too, Joe.
TC, let's get together at one of Joe's game nights and play Crossfire for 2 hours.
Oh, that'd be great. Just a little catapult.
Yeah.
I mean, he could just be in the middle and we can just shoot over his head. Oh, that'd be great. Watch him.
I'm your host, Joe Salen. This has been an awesome episode to inaugurate such a wonderful co-host. Now,
I don't think I'm coming back.
No, TC, you aren't done. We're bringing you back, man. You're getting drug over the coals here. Yeah. We're going to spit fireballs at each other. Yeah. It'll be a lot more fun than playing that marble rolling
insanity.
Plastic mess of a game. Nostalgia and nothing else.
Oh, I knew I could get you on that, Joe.
So many people talk so highly of it. I played it and I was like, I can't believe it. This is it.
Dude, I know I'm getting you for Christmas, dude.
Oh,
what's this? Good. It's a piece of paper. It's a pre-order for the new version of Fireball. Oh, this is from TC, isn't it? I hate him so much right now.
Wow. It'd be one of those where I look at it and say, oh, it's the thought that counts. No, the thought was awful.
No, that's not a nice thought that went into that.
Nah. Well, I'm your host, Joe Salen. I've been joined for his first episode as a full co-host,
TC. Woo, word.
And as always, the
Trent,
voice.
Damn. Oh, okay. I thought you were done.
Yeah, Trent's the voice of reason. I swear to God, Trent's the voice of reason in this group.
The voice that 6% of our listeners cannot actually hear because of how low it is.
Trent Ham, yeah.
Soon to be lost to L5R. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how many more of these games you import when you lose your soul to this LCR or LCG, man.
If my son gets hooked, I can tell you we're going to be playing it at home a lot. So, and
you're going to be like those Magic players with binders of cards. You're going to trap Joe up the wall going to game night with all this.
Oh, no, I'm cool. I would like to try it sometime. I'm cool with it, dude. I'm hesitating to get into it because of right now I've got my feet on top of my cooler full of binders full of Game of Thrones. So, I mean, I totally get the LCG thing. I'm still feel committed to one. I feel like I would be cheating on Game of Thrones if I got into L5R.
You know, I'm going to come up and like, hey, I got L5R. Tell me going this. Oh, this is Arkham Horror. How did this get in here? Oh, look, Joe, I have 2 decks ready to go.
Have a great week of gaming, and we'll catch you next week on the good, the bored, and the ugly.